Welcome to ACC Nation, featuring sports news and special guest interviews. Here's Will Ojanen and Jim Quist.
So this week has been all about ACC kickoff in Charlotte, where all of the teams from the Atlantic Coast Conference, three newbies, all came together. We got a chance to see the players, listen to the coaches, and to say the least, Jim Phillips set the tone right from the very beginning with his opening speech. Let's just call it piss and vinegar. I mean, that's what it was, man. I mean, he was just lighting it up on Florida State and Clemson. And I don't know, kind of subtly, maybe not so subtly, putting a flamethrower underneath the Big 12's butt as well. It was kind of amusing. The thing that it drove me crazy, Will, was, and I always have a problem with the ACC network. There is, I don't know who runs that operation, but really they're getting a C minus on the way they dealt with things here. You cannot find on any of the ACC's YouTube channels or anything else, you can't find any of the address from Jim Phillips. It's like, okay, let's hide it, man. And like there was technical difficulties. We couldn't have it on the ACC network. It was supposed to be on the the streaming side of things, and you didn't know whether stuff was on the digital side, the streaming side, ACC NX, or if it was over on the network. Now, the one group that I will give high grades to are the crew and their content, the huddle people. Overall, I'm giving that an A minus because I don't like Mark Packer. But
geez, you are a grumpy old man.
I am a grumpy old man. Man, you're right. Some of that stuff absolutely just, I was like, hey, man, all I want to do is sit in front of my monitor and watch this stuff, right? And make notes. Well, here I'm scrambling, going back and forth, trying to figure out where in the hell they're putting their content and why I can't hear or see Jim Phillips. Don't you think that the opening remarks and comments from the ACC commissioner should be on the major network side, the ACC network side of things, rather than streaming or just disappearing?
Go ahead, keep ranting. But no, you do have a valid point, though. I mean, I obviously, you being the home person you are, you can watch the stuff. I obviously still work a full-time job. I don't have that ability to pull up, especially if I'm driving a forklift or something. Yeah, probably like should probably frown upon that. What's up, guys? But it's, I don't know, just something about this whole few days. I don't know what, it just didn't sit well with me. And maybe it's because I just don't feel like there was a lot to glean off of what happened in these 3 days, or what. And maybe media days just aren't hitting me the way they wants to. Like, it was kind of the unofficial, let's get ready for the season. Now I'm just kind of like,
Hey, I tell you what it is, Will. Back years ago, some of the events that I've gone to, the football and basketball events that the ACC put on, were nowhere near as orchestrated as they are today. It is so orchestrated now that it's like we're packaging this, and I understand why they do it like this. I really do. You want to have a nice shiny object to present to people on your network, and to present the best, put your best face forward. And I think part of the reason why Phillips disappeared, or, I mean, you can find it out there if you look for it, obviously. But and I had the option to record it. I really did. But finding it was a little bit of a challenge at all. There's just, yeah. It comes across as being, okay, here you go. We're going to give you a bowl of nuts, but it's only peanuts. We're not going to give you all the macadamia and the walnuts and the almonds and all the other stuff that you like to have in that mixed bowl. They're just giving you this same old as they presented it.
So what you're saying is that it's gotten too corporate.
Well, I could put it that way. Yeah, sure.
But the funny thing is I would love to pull up the ACC Digital Network's feed on on Twitter to find out what happened, but I don't know if you could see it.
Where is it?
For some reason, I'm blocked.
Yeah, how about that?
I don't know what I did. And I just showed it. If you follow us on YouTube, I showed it. For some reason, I am blocked by the ACC Digital Network, and I do not know why. Somebody probably has a problem with the beard.
Maybe something I said.
So I took a stray for you.
That's right. You took that.
Let's go after the young guy.
Let's just. Yeah, the old guy moves too slow. He's too easy to hit. Let's see here.
But I think I will give credit. I thought some of the huddle coverage was pretty solid.
Was that the digital network you looked up?
The ACCDN, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm good to go. So
yeah. So
yeah, they're going after.
I literally looked and I even said, "Oh, this is something I said." Maybe the last interaction I had with the ACC Digital Network was me quote tweeting a bucket by DJ Burns and using the Mr. Burns excellent GIF.
And yeah, so
someone probably doesn't like The Simpsons.
Yeah, it's probably it. It's a Fox product, so it rubbed Disney the wrong way.
Yeah, how dare I?
Anyway, good God! All right,
competitors. I'll show you.
So we got 3 new teams that have debuted. We've got Cal, we've got SMU, and Stanford. For the most part, they didn't show up too bad. I'd say SMU came across the best for me in how they presented themselves. And man, I've been saying this for some time when we've talked about SMU. They're coming, and all you got to do is start looking at all the details about how much money is being foisted upon them. If you saw any of that interview with Eric Dickerson about, hey, we're coming, any of that, if you have any idea as to what's going on in college football, this team may not be this year, but I can tell you one thing. It would not surprise me if they're not in the top 5 of the ACC by the end of the season. So, and they're going to come after people, and they're hungry, and they got the money behind them, and they're on a roll. Stanford, there's some good things there. They've got some good players, and they tend to be kind of low key about a lot of stuff anyway. So we'll see how that works out. Cal, their coach struck me as being like, oh boy, what have I gotten myself into?
Oh,
So,
I just realized at some point I'm going to have to travel from California all the way to Massachusetts.
oh no, that's
I
horrible.
mean, let me say, I went to Boston last year. It was fun. It was a cool
Yeah,
place. But no, yeah, I obviously I didn't really get to see a lot of it. But yeah, I'm with you in a way on SMU. I still think they're a couple of years away. They just don't have the full complement of horses yet. They have pieces, but they're just not fully there yet.
yes, yeah,
They're gonna with the jump to a P4 league, the money, they're already doing a great job in recruiting. I think happened to be looking this up a little bit ago. I think they're like 20th. If you look at the 24/7 rankings, I didn't check rivals before, but I think 24/7 had them ranked as 20th overall, which tells you that they've got something going. And I
yeah.
think Rhett Lashley is gonna. I think we're gonna find out he's gonna be a really good coach.
He's very sad.
He's got a great quarterback already, ready to roll there. It's just a matter of do they have the skill players around them, and eventually we're gonna get to that SMU preview because I'm very curious to see what that situation's like because maybe I've like I said, I'm still not there, especially defensively, but I think they can if they can get into some shootouts. I think they can win them.
Yeah. Um, we'll be having a football preview of SMU that's coming up. Just want to remind everybody that we have Georgia Tech with Kelly Quinlan. That's already up. And we also have Stanford with Ben Parker. That's already up. Those can be heard on podcast, streaming radio, and available on YouTube. So if you want to check those out, coming up, I'm going to remind you several times about this. We have several people that are coming up in within a week. That includes Connor O'Neill, who's going to be giving us a preview of Duke, Andy Bitter. A preview of Virginia Tech. Manny Navarro is going to preview Miami, and we're working on Emily Liker to give us a preview of Syracuse if we can fit her in the right time frame. We kind of missed out a little bit because she was in Charlotte. I didn't realize that, so my bad. So we're trying to put her into the coming week. So we've got a lot of previews that are coming up, and like I said, remind you of that at the end of the program. Please do check us out. Subscribe to our podcast and to streaming radio on your favorite platform. Not only do we have our previews on there, but you'll also be able to listen to the All Sports Discussion guys, Jeff and Matthew. They have a different perspective on looking at sports and how they interview people. Their programs are also on there. They're available on YouTube. Will and I are available, and it's as simply as any of these. ACC Nation, and you can go to X or any of the other social media outlets. You'll also find us ACC Nation, just that simple. Georgia Tech,
Yep.
Brent Key. Let me tell you, he impressed me in his interview with the folks on the Huddle. That dude is intense. I just have this feeling that they're going to, we talked about this. We talked about this with Kelly Quinlan when we did the football preview for the Yellow Jackets. There is a feeling there that this team is just going to come right at you and smack you hard as many times as it takes to take a win. Their offense is just overwhelmingly one of the better offenses, at least on paper, right at this point in the ACC.
Yeah, obviously, Kelly's been a friend of the show. He's been on with us numerous times, and he mentioned, yeah, this offense is going to be really, really good this year. With Haynes King now having a full year under his belt. I obviously saw the running back Haynes have a big season going over 1,000 yards. We know the receivers there, and they got a good offensive line. It's all about the defense, though, and he mentioned it in our preview. They pretty much hit the reset on the defensive staff.
Yep.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm willing to believe it was more of a scheme issue than it was a talent issue. I feel like they had, some pieces, but it just, for whatever reason, didn't mesh. So, this is a team I'm very excited to see this year, and one that I definitely think will get to a bowl.
I think this is a team that has a very strong possibility of moving up. You talk about 17 teams within the conference. This team should be within the top 8, I think, and
I think
maybe
that's
higher.
fair.
It really depends on that defense. If that
Yep.
defense can deliver, and that offense is what it's being touted to be, look out. Georgia Tech is going to eat some people for lunch.
If
FSU, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that also, the schedule is kind of brutal too. So we may be talking in December and they're like, oh, they were 7-5,
Yeah,
and given the schedule, that's pretty
that's not
successful,
bad.
really.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
just kind of like the feeling around Brent Key is, I've, watching his last few games a couple of years ago plus last season, I totally see why kids buy into him. He
yeah,
looks he's doing a really good job there.
yeah. He is. He's intense, and he's got that energy and that drive that is infectious. And you're right. I can see where the players buy into that. Florida State was the next team that was up. Mike Norvell, who I've always thought was kind of low key to begin with, but he was strangely low key for this event, which is disturbing.
Interesting.
I think it's more disturbing from the standpoint of um, he's not talking trash going into the season, and maybe that's something everybody ought to keep an eye on because there's an awful lot of talent on both sides of the ball at Florida State.
Yeah, that's the big thing about Florida State is they, even though they lost a ton, I will see I mean, there's probably going to be a bit of a drop off, but not significant. It's not like you're going from 12-1 to 5-7. No, that's not going to
No,
happen.
no.
Could they win 8, 9 games? Sure. I, and eventually we're gonna do a Florida State preview. And I guess the one question I want to ask is, we've seen DJ Uyunglele, for 3 years at Clemson and a year at Oregon State. He's an average, maybe above average quarterback. What does this staff think they can get out of him that nobody else can?
I think he's one of those people in the NFL that they refer to as a workman. He's serviceable. I don't know that there's anything that really stands out. I mean, there's always been a lack of consistency, but yet he brings that. Every team he's ever been with, he's always brought them along and delivered, but not to a spectacular level. So, what is it, as you're pointing out, what is it about FSU's coaches that they feel that he is going to be able to do something that will allow that team to rise above the norm? Because that's what it's going to take to win the ACC this season. You have to have something more than. Do they have it?
That's the $1 million question, Jim.
Yes, it is. SMU, Rhett Lashley, and I have made fun of Rhett Lashley in the past. With a name like Quest, I shouldn't do that, but he sounds like he belongs in a Gone with the Wind, movie because he's just got that name. Rhett Lashley. But as you pointed out earlier, here's somebody with some experience, who's got some chops, and he has found himself a perfect place to land. And if he can deliver for SMU, the dude is on a roll. And I think this season he is going to have a really good performance, better than last year. And it's gonna put him in a situation where people will either do one of two things. They're either going to be knocking on his door and say, hey, we want to hire you. And I think they're going to have a hard time doing that if SMU looks at Rhett Lashley and says, hey, he's delivering for us, that money's coming. So he's in a really good position.
Yeah, we talked about a moment ago, just the offense, I think, will be fine. I mean, Preston Stone is regarded as one of the better quarterbacks in the country, and I'm very excited to see what he brings to the table. And I think the thing that is interesting about this offense is they don't have like one guy that they rely on. This is definitely a spread it out, I'll get a bunch of people involved type of offense. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very interesting to see how that translates over to the ACC.
Up next, Pitt, Pat Narduzzi, Nate Yarnell is the quarterback. There was something about Pat that I wrote down here. Um, this is something that he said in his speech. Only 3 teams over the last decade plus have championship rings. Pitt is one of them. It's not about hiring friends. It's about winning championships. There was an intensity there that I haven't seen in Pat Narduzzi for years, or at least out in public. That was pretty impressive. And I think it was sort of like, okay, I've figured this out and we're coming. They want another ring. Now, whether or not they can do it this year, I don't know. No.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I know he hired this young up and coming offensive coordinator who's coming up from the FCS level, whose offense has pretty much torched everybody. But I can't get out of my head what he did after they won the ACC 3 years ago, and he complained about not running the football enough, and I'm just like, you obviously just won the damn league with a high passing offense, and you ultimately your quarterback got drafted in the first round. Why do you want why fix something that's not broken? And
Yeah.
I know he brought, like I said, he brought in a new offensive coordinator, Cade Bell, who I think is like 30 years old. And I guess it's kind of like I'm just wondering, you've got two opposites. Is this like, I don't know, is this going to be like a Paul Abdul opposites attract thing, or is this going to be, yeah, is this going to be oil and water? I don't know. It could, I see this going one of two ways.
Well, maybe it's that youthful energy and those new ideas that have lit a fire under Pat Narduzzi. Honestly, I've always considered Pat Narduzzi to be on a warm seat for the last probably couple of years. I just think he's only delivering up to a certain point. And at what point does Pitt say we need to move on?
And the thing of it is, ever since really the transfer portal because become a thing the last few years, he's really been victimized for it. Go see Jordan Addison, for example. He had this All-American receiver and USC stole him. I mean, really steal him, but they got him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am worried about the talent level there now. It's not what it was just a couple of years ago. And if things are kind of flat this year, and I think he's going to have a really hot seat going into 25.
Yeah. I see that too. Somebody who's not on a hot seat, he may be on a warm seat as the season progresses if the expectations, which may be unreasonable from the standpoint of Hokies fans, Brent Pry at Virginia Tech is pumped. He's ready to roll. He's got some stuff going on there. Kyron Drones as quarterback. They have potential. They look like a team that is familiar to most of us who remember Beamer ball. They look like they're starting to come up out of the swamp and emerge. So if they deliver as expected, Pry is going to be, lauded as the next Frank. Well, not quite yet, but he will be respected like Frank Beamer, and a lot will go into keeping him there.
Yeah, the thing that stands out about this Hokies team, and obviously we'll get more into it when we have Andy Bitter on, but I think the thing that stands out with me in this team is they returned so much back from last year's team. Plus, they're going to be healthy. I mean, they had lost all three of their starting receivers at one point during the season, and they were struggling at that position. Now, it helped that Kyra Jones and Bashal Tun, really developed a very big, good dynamic in the backfield. Plus, I like their defense this year. They pulled a guy in from Duke. I forget his name, Aeneas Peebles, or I think is who it was. He's, and brings another addition to a really good defense. And they obviously have a really good schedule in their favor. This year, I think the thing, like, and we talked, I don't remember if Kelly Quinlan, we were talking about it. I don't know if he said it off air or on air, but he reminded us they really only beat one team with a winning record last season. That was Boston College. I mean, in terms of the regular season, but their schedule is favorable in 2024 when you look at who they have. I mean, Vanderbilt's not much. Marshall, and that they're coming to Blacksburg. ODU should be down. Rutgers could be an interesting game, but I would lean Hokies. Miami and Hard Rock might lean Miami there. They should beat
Never know.
Stanford on the road. You never know though. And some of the tough games. You mean Clemson is November 9th at Lane Stadium. And then you get the Commonwealth Cup game at in Blacksburg this year, and going for, I think it's 20 wins and 21 games, something to that effect. There is a lot of
Who's
there
counting?
is a lot to like about this team. I'd rather not count, but that's beside the point.
I will make sure that I bring my my Hokies coffee cup on, during that weekend. But at the same time, I'll have to wear my Virginia hat.
I'm surprised you're even allowed to have that coffee cup in your house.
Well, there is some discussion among the missus about that, and she will not drink from it. So that will tell you a lot. But I got family members, and some of them are Virginia Tech fans, and of course, my wife being a UVA grad, and it's like that whole thing. I'm torn between two lovers routine, and so I have to walk a thin line all the time. Next up was Cal, and as I mentioned, Justin Wilcox seemed to be kind of it's like he had not been in the spotlight before, new environment, new people, the whole 9 yards. And he just seemed very unsettled. And I know that he's building his program. And it takes time. It just takes time to build programs. So I just I thought the interesting thing, he brought two quarterbacks with him to the kickoff in Fernando Mendoza and Chandler Rogers, and we'll see. That's not the only team that brought two quarterbacks, by the way. So we have all these quarterback battles going on among teams. Allegedly, I don't think truly that it's like that. I think that these coaches are being smart and giving some exposure to these kids, and that's a good way to keep them.
And it's the case for some of these schools that they're not going to really tell you who's starting until you see them come out for the first drive on game one.
That's right.
They're gonna leave you in the lurch as long as they can.
Yep.
And I think the thing about Cal is I don't care who the starting quarterback is. They have somebody who will probably be in discussion for best back in the league in Jaden Knott. I mean, that guy had over 1,300 yards rushing last year. He was a good pass catcher too. He's a really good all around back, and I think he's going to be a problem for some of these defenses he's going to face this year.
Cal is another team that should do fairly well. Out of 17 teams, I see them anywhere from 10 to 7. I mean, that's for right now. We haven't even sat down and really gone through these in detail enough to give a true early top pick. So we'll do that.
We got plenty of time to figure that out.
Plenty of time. So Stanford, Troy Taylor is the coach there, and again, another situation where you have somebody who's rolling with stuff and building a team, and he brought his quarterback Ashton Daniels with him.
Yeah, and when we talked about when we did our Stanford preview, a couple weeks ago, when we talked about he's not necessarily a lock to start. He's the leader in the clubhouse right now. But they have, it could still be another tough year. Like I said, they need bodies and lots of them, and they just don't have them quite yet. At least the depth is not there. They have pretty solid players. And we talked about Eligeo Manor last week with our guest, and we talked about he's just a really, really good receiver. And we people like to bring up Travis Hunter as one of the better corners in the game, and he just lit him up in that game against Colorado. So we know he can, that even when the lights shine brightest, he can step up and play big.
That's going to be an important factor because these are teams, again, Cal, SMU, Stanford are teams that none of these folks have played. And, it's going to be something to get used to. So there's going to be a lot of in-game adjustments. So we'll find out which coaches are good at that and which ones are bad. Virginia, Tony Elliott, he's going into, I think, an important year for him. He's got Tony Muskett at quarterback. Now, the question is whether or not Tony Elliott is at that point where his seat is warm or not.
I think regardless of outcome this year, I think 25 will be, if they struggle again this year, I think 25 will be the year if they struggle again and go like 4-8, he's got to have to make some staff changes because just kind of looking over things before we started and just kind of reminding us of just how like some of these teams that were at the bottom of the league in like points scored, for example, like, Boston College got a new coach. He wasn't fired, but he left for another job because this team was struggling. Syracuse, new coach. Pitt, for example, got a new offensive coordinator. They're trying something new. And then defensively, we talked about Georgia Tech and their struggles defensively. Replaced the entire staff, basically. Virginia was at the bottom of the league in both offense and defense and just pretty much brought it back for the most part. Like I said, I think don't think people realize the talent level outside of just a few pieces was just hasn't been there. I thought he did a really good job in the portal this offseason, bringing in some of the additions like Chris Tyree. I hear a lot about Corey Thomas, the guy they brought in, who's going to play kind of a hybrid role. Um, but this is the thing. We talked about you know Cal sending two quarterbacks and kind of leaving. He brought Tony Muskett in for a reason. A lot of people think Anthony Colandrea is going to be the starter, and I'm telling y'all, that's not set in stone. This is going to go into camp, and we're not going to know until most likely the first game.
I've heard a lot of chatter outside of the Virginia circles saying that Virginia is a team that maybe people ought to be paying a little more closely, more attention to, be a little closer attention to, because there's a lot there that maybe people are not giving them the benefit of the doubt. So.
And some of that's because they played so many one score games last year, and for the most part ended up on the short end of those. But if they can figure out how to play in close games, maybe not clinch up on offense as much, they could turn around and see, even if they finish 5-7, I think that'll be okay. Just show that you're improving
Yeah.
as a coach. That's the next step.
Yep.
And I think the schedule is light enough early on that I think that he can pull out a win or two and show that. But like I say, if they come out of the gate stumbling, lose to Wake or Maryland or BC or whatever, then and they're sitting, midway, close to midway at like 1-4, and I'm like, he's going to have to do something.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think he's going to get fired necessarily at the end of this year, but I think he's going to have to make some staff changes. Maybe change the offensive coordinator, for example.
Yeah, I don't know what the appetite is for moving on and finding success outside of Tony Elliott at this point. I mean, I think this season is going to be telling.
Yeah.
So, somebody that we have thought is walking a thin line. Mario Cristobal, Miami. Mm-hmm. However, there's been progress there. So it's not been the type of progress that people who like to proclaim the U is back would like to see. We'll talk to obviously Manny Navarro about that in the coming week, because he's pretty vociferous in his explanations about how he feels about people who proclaim that and then don't back it up. Cam Ward is a quarterback, at least for the moment, and I've watched some video on Cam. I don't know whether it's the surrounding talents or if it's Cam himself, but it didn't do much for me when I was watching the tape of spring game.
Yeah, I think the thing with Miami once again is they're going to be really good on the ground, but we don't. Damian Martinez, they pulled out of Oregon State. It looks like he's just going to be in for a monster season at running back. They obviously Cristobal loves to make sure he wins in the trenches. He's got a really good offensive line again. The defensive line is improving. I don't think it's quite where it needs to be. That's kind of where I'm concerned about, like whether or not they can take that next step. I think he's definitely brought in the talent. That's not a question. He's just not there when it comes to X's and O's.
Yeah.
He's all about the Jimmies and Joes, as they say.
We'll see how that all plays out this season as well. I think that it puts him in a very precarious situation if Miami doesn't deliver something this season. They should be in the top 5 of the ACC, and if they're not, then I'd say that maybe he's going to be looking for another job. That, maybe it's too early to talk about that. Louisville, Jeff Brom, Taylor, I think it's Slow.
Tyler Slow, yeah.
Yeah, quarterback. That's not a good name to have as a quarterback.
Tyler Slow, yeah. Well, the thing of it is with him is he's always hurt. And that's the thing, like, and whenever we get to Louisville preview, that's one of the big questions is what's the depth of quarterback? Because he's proven he cannot stay healthy.
Yeah.
You can't just bring him in and think he's just gonna be there for 12 games. I think the most he's played in the season's 8. It's not so you got to bank in the fact he might miss some time. But Braum has done a really good job building just building the talent. He relied pretty heavily on the portal again. I still think he's working on getting those high school recruits in there, and I think he's trying to balance both of them out. And he's still, like I say, he's still using the portal quite a bit. And I think eventually he's going to have to kind of switch that over to do more high school recruiting. But yeah, if it's working, it's working.
Yeah, I think you have a good point about making that switch, easing in. I mean, he's only been there a short period of time, so he needs to establish, 3 years minimum to establish some kind of a system and get your recruiting really going. Boston College, gee, I feel like this guy has been somewhere before. Bill O'Brien is the new coach at Boston College. Thomas Castellanos is the quarterback. Actually, Castellanos is not a bad quarterback. It's just a matter of whether or not Boston College can put linemen, receivers, running backs, any kind of talent around him.
Yeah, and I was actually reading some notes from friend of the show AJ Black today on some of the things that Bill O'Brien talked about at his media session. He's praising Castellanos as someone who's been one of the more improved players, in the spring and whatnot. And he had a pretty solid season. It was definitely above average. And I think there's definitely some room to grow there this season. But they need some of their skill players to step up too. And I think as long as O'Brien sticks around, I think Boston College will be in a pretty good spot. I think he's going to be, even though it's been a decade since O'Brien's been a head coach at the college level, I think he's good enough, at least, getting the recruiting aspect in, that they should be in pretty good hands for as long as he's there.
Duke and Manny Diaz is a familiar name. Is the new head coach there. He's got 2 quarterbacks that he's dealing with, Grayson Loftus and Malik Murphy. We'll be having Connor O'Neill on to talk about Duke on the program here really soon.
Yeah, and Malik Murphy's kind of the favorite of the job, the guy who came over from Texas because he was kind of in a numbers crunch with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, college football, Arch Manning, Texas. Got to get the algorithm to find us, but and I think we can all say, Manny Diaz kind of got hosed at Miami. I think he deserved another shot, and I think this is going to be a good landing spot for him. I think there's still some pretty solid talent in this team. It's just a matter of will it all mesh?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's reason to believe that there could be some success in Duke's future, at least this season.
I think you point something out about Manny Diaz that I would agree with, that there are coaches, there are people in general who have talent and just get into a bad situation where things don't work out, but you learn a lot from it. So if you get an opportunity to bounce from there to another opportunity such as this, then you take all that bad experience, reverse it, and put it to good use. And I think that's what Manny Diaz will show us, is that he is a good coach. He has the capability of delivering. Now, getting the top-notch players into Duke like Elko was doing is a challenge. Well, we'll see what happens. Next up is Dave Clawson, Wake Forest. And good old Dave didn't bring anybody but defensive and offensive linemen and a wide receiver, Taylor Moran, with him. So who's quarterbacking?
It's an interesting conundrum because we know Wake Forest as this team that runs a slow mesh and has always been good on offense. And for whatever the reason, they were quite they struggled quite a bit last season offensive. Well, really on both sides of the football. And it kind of culminated in a rough season. But I think the quarterback's going to be Hank Bachmeier, who he's been around the block a bit, let's just say. I think he was at I want to say it was Boise State at one point for a while. I think that's where he got started. I don't Yeah, I feel like there might have been a stop in between Boise State and Wake Forest, but he's going to be the go-to guy this year. Interesting to see how he meshes with that offense. And you talked about Taylor Moore, and he's been a pretty consistent receiver, for them. And they do bring back Donovan Green, who, when he's healthy, is a very talented player, but that's the problem. He just can't seem to stay healthy.
Yeah. Up next is NC State. Dave Doran projected something slightly different, a little more excitement than I normally see out of Coach Doran. He appears to me to realize that everything is running on a clock and that he wants to get a championship for the Wolfpack before that clock runs out. So he's got Grayson McCall at quarterback, Jordan Waters at running back. This is a team, again, that has enough personnel that should be in that top 5 of the Atlantic Coast Conference.
If everything falls right, then we could be talking about NC State as a contender for the ACC this year. It's just a matter of how Grayson McCall adapts to this offense coming over from Coastal Carolina. I mean, he was a little bit banged up at the end of last season. I think he missed a lot of it, a lot of last season. Jordan Waters, they brought in from Duke. He was a valuable piece there. Their receiver, why his name escapes me at the moment, I don't know, but they have the receiver that is very much the kitchen sink utility guy that Casey Concepcion, that's what it was. I knew I could remember it eventually, but Concepcion was a very much a gadget player for them who can catch passes and can run the ball occasionally. And I think the key to NC State's offense is having another weapon that can take a little bit of the pressure off of him. The defense will be fine, even though they've lost some guys. Peyton Wilson's gone. They lost a couple of their big players on defense. It feels like they should still be fine there.
Syracuse has a new coach, and thank goodness it should have been done a couple of years ago. Fran Brown walks in, and he has Kyle McCord at quarterback, LaQuint Allen at running back, and a big challenge in front of him.
Yeah, I'm very excited to potentially talk to Emily, hopefully next week, because this is a team that I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that just within the offseason, Fran Brown's been able to elevate the talent at that program. He is known as a great recruiter at Georgia. He was one of their top recruiters, but he's never been a head coach. That's where the question mark is. We know he can recruit, but can he coach? He's definitely, like I said, elevated the talent. Kyle McCord getting him from Ohio State. LaQuinn Allen, it was already there, but he is a really good running back, 1,000-yard rusher. It's just a matter of how much he's going to have to learn on the job fast, because This would be an interesting year for them, and I don't know if they're going to make a bowl. I think they could potentially, but yeah, this is I'm excited to talk to Emily and see what the excitement level for this fan base is with the new coach and whatnot.
Clemson, Dabo Sweeney, the infamous non-portal guy who came out with some interesting comments in regard to the portal, saying he's not against the portal. He just hasn't had a need to use it, and which seemed like a softball way of peddling that he may be using it in the future. He's got Cade Klubnik at quarterback, who I think has a lot of potential, and Phil Moffitt, running back, among others. I think this may be the team that we have to worry about the most this season, because they've had a couple of off seasons, and it's feels about like time for Clemson to come back.
Yeah, I'll believe the portal stuff when I actually see it. They could have, they probably could have been a contender last year if they would have gotten a wide receiver out of the portal, just saying. But I do like I'm starting to like Clemson more and more this year. It's all a matter of can Klubnik take that next step. I don't think there's going to be a problem run the football. Swinney said Maffa's going to get a lot of carries. We're going to see a lot of Phil Maffa getting some burn. And I've heard a lot about these freshman receivers he has coming in that some are saying are some of the best they've had since like DeAndre Hopkins. So they can get the DeAndre Hopkins type of talent on the field. They have a real good shot of winning the league. I don't think the defense will be a problem either. They're going to still be really good.
Yeah. That's a team definitely to keep an eye on. Last but not least is North Carolina. Mac Brown. I think will be celebrating his 73rd birthday. I don't know why, but man, he looks older than 73, but that's just, I don't know. He brought
He's 73, but in coach years, he's like in his 90s.
Well, I can believe that. I think Coach K probably is a classic example of that. All the smacking around and issues with his back and et cetera, that he had over the years. He definitely was a lot older.
Mm-hmm.
In coach years. Connor Harrell and Max Johnson are the two quarterbacks that Brown brought with him. And in the ACC, Mac Brown is a guy who has won a national championship. Who's the other?
Dabo.
Yeah, of course. That was easy.
Yeah. Did you see Mac Brown's quote? I think it was today. He was talking about how some of the coaches like were recruiting against him. Were talking about how he's going to retire.
Yeah.
Yet those coaches have since been fired.
Yep.
It was an interesting story. It was a comment because that's how you're supposed to negatively recruit is bring up a coach's age. But I mean, it's kind of dirty, but it's
the
kind of
man
how
delivers.
yeah.
He hasn't done as well, perhaps at UNC that he would like to, but I'm not sure that this is the year for UNC.
Yeah. I mean, Drake May was just the third pick of the draft,
Well, true. So, boom.
Yeah.
There you go.
I don't. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, Jim. I don't know if this is the year. I think they're gonna rely pretty heavily on the running game. Amari Hampton is gonna be in discussion for best back in the league. Feel like they're gonna use a lot of him this year. And then the question is can this defense actually play defense? It has not happened much in the last handful of years.
Yeah.
So they might want to learn to start playing that if they're going to be successful.
I think that has been the weakness for North Carolina longer than I can shake a stick. which is a shame because, with the offense that they've had, some of the combinations of offense that they've had, some of the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, et cetera, that have come in and out of that door at Chapel Hill. If they just had a better defense, they would have gone a lot further.
Definitely.
They would be. All right, that's all of the schools, and taking a look at that. The Dodd Trophy, the preseason watch list, features 6 ACC coaches out of the 21 who are listed: Jeff Brom, Mario Cristobal, Dave Doran, Mike Norvell, Brent Pry, and Dabo Sweeney. Sweeney won it in 2011, and Norvell won it in 2023. So something to hang your hat on there. So the ACC is a pretty solid football conference, contrary to what a lot of other people think. I'm in the process of, and I've been in contact with Mike Barber. And for those of you who are ACC sports fans, you'll know Mike writes and is also podcasting for the Richmond Times-Dispatch, covers the Atlantic Coast Conference, also covers Virginia and Virginia Tech. I had asked Mike to come and join me, just the two of us, and it's because of scheduling aspects. It's during the day. Talk about conferences, realignments, those sort of things. Get a feel, what he's seeing, what he's hearing, what he feels, and get those observations. And I hope to have him on. Maybe I'll get him on this coming week as well, and add that to the portfolio of podcasts. Again, remind you that we have Kelly Quinlan, Georgia Tech, Ben Parker, Stanford. Those 2 programs are already up. They're available on podcast. Please subscribe. They're available on streaming radio, ACC Nation, and they're available on YouTube, also at ACC Nation. If you want to follow us on social media, simply go to ACC Nation. You'll find us. It's very quick, very simple. You can also follow Will. He's at Will's World MN. That's Will's World MN. And certainly, we would enjoy interacting with you. Football season is coming up. We're going to have some information on the website pretty soon about the way too early top 25 of college baseball, in which you'll find an awful lot of ACC teams, among other things, including Stanford. So we'll talk about that in probably an upcoming episode, or you'll see it on our website at accnation.net. Until next time, cheers.
School.
Thanks for listening to ACC Nation. Be sure to listen, like and subscribe to our podcast, radio, and YouTube channels by visiting accnation.net. Follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, Mastodon, Threads, Blue Sky, and Reddit at ACC Nation.
ACC Nation.